Oh no! Go by my way. That boys are good. Hey, don't lose ball. Don't lose ball. We don't bring keeper. Hey, guys. Okurushi. I want for Boba. Who win a ball inside the ball? Thank you. Matches is the foreign matches. Put it up.